The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Assembly was the largest room ever built by any species. Its walls were made of living crystal that had grown for 10,000 years. Its ceiling reached so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. 1,700 representatives from across 4 spiral arms of the galaxy sat in their designated seats. Waiting for the vote that would change everything, Ambassador Kong Te stood at the human delegation's podium. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples, and eyes that had seen too many broken promises. For 3 years he had worked in this chamber. For 3 years he had smiled at species who looked at humans like they were insects. For 3 years he had kept his anger buried deep inside his chest. Today that anger was rising. "The motion before the council is simple," High Speaker Vorath announced. His skin was blue and smooth like polished stone. His voice echoed through the chamber with the authority of a species that had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 8,000 years. The Movin hierarchy claims ancient territorial rights to 3 worlds in the outer reach. These worlds are currently occupied by human colonists. The council will now vote on the validity of this claim. Lieutenant Unipark stood beside Ambassador Te. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and a mind like a computer. Her fingers moved across her datapad, translating the streams of information that flowed from every corner of the chamber. As the votes began to appear on her screen, her face grew pale. "Sir," she whispered, leaning close to Te, "this is not good." Te did not respond. He already knew. The Movin representative, a creature that looked like a spider made of metal and shadow, sat across the chamber with what might have been a smile on its face. The Movins had been preparing for this moment for decades. They had made deals in dark rooms. They had promised favors and threatened punishments. They had turned the entire Galactic Council into a weapon against humanity. The voting took only minutes. Species after species cast their decision. Some looked ashamed as they voted against humanity. Others did not bother to hide their contempt. The humans were new to the galactic stage. They had only joined the Council 150 years ago. To the ancient empires of the galaxy, humans were children playing at a game they did not understand. "The vote is complete," High Speaker Vorath announced. 847 in favor. 412 against. The motion carries. The Movin hierarchy's territorial claim is recognized as valid. A wave of murmuring swept through the chamber. Some species celebrated quietly. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Elder Thovak of the Valari Collective, an ancient being whose body was more plant than animal, closed his many eyes in what looked like grief. Ambassador Te stood perfectly still. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. He had prepared for this moment. He had hoped it would never come, but he had prepared. "Lieutenant Park," he said softly. "Signal the delegation." Una nodded and tapped a command into her datapad. Behind Ambassador Te, all 47 members of the human delegation rose from their seats at the exact same moment. The movement was smooth and silent, like soldiers following an order they had practiced 1,000 times. Every human in the chamber stood facing the exit. High Speaker Vorath noticed the movement and raised one slender hand. "Ambassador Kang, the session is not yet concluded. Protocol requires all delegations to remain until Te removed his translation earpiece." He set it gently on the podium in front of him. The small device made a soft click against the crystal surface, but in the sudden silence of the chamber, it sounded like a gunshot. "United Earth Confederacy does not recognize this verdict," Te said. His voice was calm and clear. He did not shout. He did not need to. "We invoke Article 7 of the Founding Charter, the right of sovereign withdrawal." The murmuring stopped. Every eye in the chamber turned toward the human delegation. Article 7 was a relic from the earliest days of the Council. It had been included in the Charter as a safety measure, a promise that no species would ever be trapped against their will. In 12,000 years, no one had ever used it, until now. The Movin representative rose from its seat. "You cannot simply leave," it hissed. "The Council has made its decision. Your colonies now belong to the hierarchy. This is the law." Te turned to face the spider-like creature. Something in his eyes made the Movin take a small step backward. Those colonies have 12 million human souls, Tay said. 12 million men, women, and children who left Earth to build new lives among the stars. They trusted us to protect them. They trusted the Council to treat them fairly. He paused, letting his words sink into the silent chamber. That trust has been broken. He began walking toward the exit. The other humans followed in perfect formation. Their footsteps echoed against the crystal floor like the beating of a drum. Ambassador Kang, Vorath called out. If you leave this chamber, humanity will stand alone. You will have no allies. No protection. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Your species is young and weak. You cannot survive without the Council. Tay stopped at the great doors. They were made of metal so old that no one remembered who had forged them. He turned back to face the assembled representatives of 1,000 civilizations. Let me be clear, he said. The United Earth Confederacy is not asking for permission. We are not negotiating. We are leaving. And those 3 colonies in the outer reach? We will not abandon them. Not today. Not ever. He placed his hand on the ancient door. It began to open, revealing the long corridor beyond. If the move in hierarchy wants our worlds, Tay continued, they are welcome to come and take them. But I promise you this. They will pay a price that will make their victory taste like ashes in their mouths. The humans marched out of the chamber. One by one, they disappeared into the corridor. Lieutenant Una Park was the last to leave. She paused at the threshold and looked back at the stunned assembly. You made a mistake today, she said quietly. You looked at us and saw prey. You will learn how wrong you were. The doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder. For a long moment, no one in the chamber spoke. The silence was heavy and thick, filled with the weight of what had just happened. Then Elder Thovak of the Volari leaned toward the representative beside him, his ancient voice barely a whisper. What have we done? No one had an answer. In the corridor outside, Ambassador Tay walked with his delegation toward the transport that would take them back to Earth. His hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. From anticipation, Sir Lieutenant Park said, falling into step beside him. Do you think they understood? Tay smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, not yet. But they will. He looked up at the stars visible through the corridor's transparent ceiling. They will learn what humanity is capable of. And when they do, they will remember this day. They will remember the day they made an enemy of Earth. The transport doors opened before them. Tay stepped inside without looking back. Behind him, the greatest assembly in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, wondering if they had just made the worst mistake in their 12,000-year history. They had. 48 hours after the humans walked out of the Galactic Assembly, the galaxy began to worry. At first, the Council expected protests. They expected angry messages and diplomatic demands. They expected humans to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness and a second chance at negotiation. The Movens had already begun preparing their occupation fleet. The Kellen Federation had drafted a statement of concern that said nothing and meant even less. Everyone assumed that the humans had made a foolish mistake in the heat of the moment. They assumed wrong. Every human embassy in the galaxy went dark on the same day. Communication channels that had been open for 150 years suddenly stopped responding. Relay stations that had carried messages across the stars fell silent. The only signal coming from human space was a simple, automated message that played on every frequency, all channels suspended. Stand by, nothing else. No explanation. No timeline, just silence. Admiral Young Wan stood on the bridge of the UEC Sovereign, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Through the viewport, he watched as ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel and fell into formation around his flagship, destroyers and cruisers, carriers and support vessels. 87 warships in total, the largest fleet Earth had assembled outside its home system. Admiral Commander Narration reported from her station. All vessels have arrived. The fleet is ready, Juan nodded slowly. He was an old man with white hair and a face lined by decades of service. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts. He had led rescue missions into dying stars, He had trained an entire generation of officers who now commanded ships of their own, but he had never faced anything like this. "What about the colonies?" he asked. "Civilian evacuation is proceeding on schedule. Underground shelters on all 3 worlds are at 70% capacity. Essential personnel are being moved to secure locations." Nari paused and looked at her display. "Sir, long-range sensors have detected the moving fleet. 300 vessels, positioned at the edge of the disputed zone. 300 against 87. Juan had faced worse odds in simulations. But simulations did not kill people. Simulations did not leave families without fathers and mothers. They outnumber us nearly 4-1, Nari said quietly. Our ships are newer and faster, but still, 4-1. Juan turned away from the viewport. His eyes found the crew working at their stations. Young men and women who had signed up to explore the stars, not fight a war. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders like a physical force. "Numbers are not everything, Commander," he said. "The Movens have spent 8,000 years bullying weaker species. They have forgotten what it means to fight an enemy that refuses to surrender. We will remind them." Across the galaxy, intelligence officers from a dozen species watched in confusion as humanity mobilized. What they saw made no sense. Earth had always appeared weak. Their fleet was small. Their territory was limited. Their technology was unremarkable. Every analysis had concluded that humans posed no threat to the established order. But now, those analyses were being rewritten. Human shipyards that had been producing trade vessels and passenger liners suddenly began producing warships. Factories that had manufactured consumer goods switched to military equipment overnight. It was as if humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, building infrastructure that could transform from peaceful to deadly at the flip of a switch. And then there were the defense installations, deep in the asteroid belts of the Sol system. Ancient stations began powering up for the first time in over a century. These were relics from humanity's early space age, built during a time when Earth's nations still feared each other. Massive railgun platforms. Nuclear missile silos hidden inside hollowed-out rocks. Automated defense networks that could track and destroy any ship that entered their range. Humanity had built these weapons when they were still afraid of themselves. They had kept them hidden when they joined the Council, never revealing their true capabilities. Now, those capabilities were being revealed. On the Kellan homeworld, High Speaker Vorath sat in his private chambers, reading report after report with growing alarm. His chief advisor, a thin creature named Tolov, stood nearby, his blue skin pale with worry. High Speaker Tolov said, "Our intelligence division has completed their reassessment of human military strength," and Tolov hesitated. "We were wrong. Very wrong. Their fleet numbers are higher than we estimated. Their weapons are more advanced. Their industrial capacity is—" He trailed off, searching for words. "They have been hiding from us. All this time, they have been pretending to be weak." Vorath set down his datapad. His hands were trembling slightly. "Why? Why would they do that?" "I do not know, High Speaker. Perhaps they did not trust us. Perhaps they were waiting to see if we would prove ourselves worthy of trust." Tolov's voice dropped. "We failed that test." Vorath stood and walked to his window. Outside, the capital city of the Kellan Federation stretched to the horizon. A monument to 8,000 years of civilization. He had always believed that his species was wise, that they understood the galaxy better than the young races who had only recently reached the stars. Now he was beginning to wonder if wisdom had become arrogance, and if arrogance had become blindness. "Contact the Moven hierarchy," he ordered. "Tell them to delay their occupation fleet. Tell them that we need to reconsider the situation." "They will not listen, High Speaker. They are too eager for their prize." "Then tell them what we have learned about human military strength." Tolov's expression was grim. "I already did, High Speaker. They do not believe it. They think our intelligence is wrong, or that we are trying to trick them for some reason." He paused. "They are moving forward with the occupation." Vorath closed his eyes. In his mind, he could see the great chamber of the assembly. He could see the human delegation walking out, their footsteps echoing against the crystal floor. He could see the doors closing behind them with a sound like the end of an era. "Then God help them," he whispered, "because humanity will not." On the UEC Sovereign, Admiral Wan received word that the Movin fleet was advancing toward human space. He read the report calmly, then set it aside and looked at his bridge crew. "All hands," he announced over the ship-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Wan. In approximately 6 hours, we will engage the Movin occupation fleet. They believe we are weak. They believe we will run at the sight of their numbers. They believe that humanity is a species that can be pushed around and conquered without consequence." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "They are wrong. Every man and woman in this fleet knows what we are fighting for. We are fighting for our homes, for our families, for the 12 million people on those colonies who trusted us to protect them. The galaxy thinks we are children playing at war. Today, we will show them what human children are capable of." He took a deep breath. "All ships prepare for combat. May God be with us all." Commander Narration looked at her admiral with something like awe in her eyes. "Do you think we can win, sir?" Juan smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was steel behind it. "I think the Movins have never fought an enemy like us. I think they have forgotten that war is not about numbers or technology. It is about will. And no species in this galaxy has more will than humanity." He turned back to the viewport, watching the stars streak past as his fleet moved toward battle. "Today, we remind them why they should have feared us from the beginning." Commander Drell of the Movin Vanguard had conquered 17 worlds in his career. He had crushed rebellions and broken the spirits of species far older than humanity. His body was made of metal and shadow, a fusion of organic tissue and mechanical enhancement that made him faster and stronger than any natural creature. He feared nothing. As his fleet approached the human colonies, he allowed himself to feel something close to joy. This would be easy. The intelligence report said that humanity had fewer than 100 ships in the region. His vanguard alone numbered 300. The occupation would be complete within days. The council had already approved the territorial transfer. Everything was proceeding according to plan. "Commander," his sensor officer reported, "we are detecting a human fleet in the shadow of the gas giant ahead. Approximately 90 vessels." Drell made a sound that might have been laughter. 90 against 300. They must be desperate. Hold formation. We will brush them aside like dust. His fleet moved forward in perfect order. 300 warships arranged in a wall of metal and firepower. On the bridge of every vessel, Movin officers watched their displays with confidence. They had done this before. They knew how conquered species behaved. First came the posturing and the threats. Then came the retreat. Then came the surrender. It was always the same. The human fleet did not retreat. Admiral Wan watched the Movin wall approaching on his tactical display. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady on the arms of his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew of the UEC Sovereign worked in focused silence. "Admiral," Commander Narration reported, "the enemy fleet is within weapons range in 4 minutes. All ships, accelerate to attack speed," Wan ordered. "Execute battle formation Alpha." The human fleet surged forward. 87 ships moving as one, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. They did not slow down. They did not spread out into a defensive pattern. They charged directly at the heart of the Movin formation. On the Movin flagship, Commander Drell watched the approaching humans with confusion. What are they doing? They are coming straight at us. That is suicide. Perhaps they mean to intimidate us, his tactical officer suggested. They will break away at the last moment. Perhaps. Drell leaned forward in his seat. Something about the situation was making him uneasy, though he could not explain why. "All ships, prepare for combat. Target the lead vessels." And then something strange happened. Every communication system in the Movin fleet suddenly came alive with sound. It was human music. A great orchestra of instruments playing a thunderous composition that seemed to shake the very walls of the ships. Drums pounded like the heartbeat of a giant. Strings soared like birds in flight. Voices rose in a chorus that spoke of triumph and glory and the fierce joy of battle. Drell had never heard anything like it. For a moment, he could only stare at his speakers in bewilderment. What is this? What are they doing? It appears to be some kind of musical transmission, his communications officer reported. They are broadcasting it on all frequencies. We cannot block it. The music grew louder and louder, and then, at the exact moment when the composition reached its thunderous poquen, the cannons in the recording fired their explosive notes. The human fleet opened fire. Captain Bora Jang commanded the destroyer. Unyielding from her position near the center of the formation, she was a small woman with sharp eyes and a voice that could cut through chaos like a knife. As her ship's railguns spat death into the moving line, she allowed herself a fierce smile. All batteries, continuous fire, she ordered. Target their command vessels first. Make them blind before we make them dead. The human ships moved through the move-in formation like wolves through a herd of sheep. They did not fight in neat lines like the move-ins expected. They weaved and dodged, covering each other, exploiting gaps in the enemy formation. Their weapons were precise and devastating. Their pilots were skilled and fearless. The move-ins had never seen anything like it. Commander, Drell's sensor officer shouted over the chaos. We have lost contact with 12 vessels. No, 15. No, 23. Drell stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His beautiful formation was falling apart. Ships were exploding all around him. The humans were not fighting like a fleet. They were fighting like a single organism with 87 bodies, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. Return fire, he screamed. All ships return fire. But the move-ins were slow. Their fleet was designed for intimidation, not combat. They had spent so long bullying weaker species that they had forgotten how to fight an enemy that fought back. Their shots went wide. Their formations crumbled. Their confidence shattered like glass. On the unyielding, Captain Jang watched her tactical display with cold satisfaction. Weapons officer. Status report. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, Captain. We are counting 62 confirmed kills. Another 147 vessels have surrendered or are too damaged to continue fighting, and our losses. For ships, Captain. The Resolute, the Defiant, the Morning Star, and the Brave Heart. All crew have been recovered. No fatalities. Jang leaned back in her chair. 4 ships against 62 kills and 147 surrenders. Those were the kind of numbers that would be remembered for centuries. Those were the kind of numbers that would make the galaxy pay attention. Commander, Drell is requesting communication. Her communications officer reported put him through. The main view screen flickered, and Drell's spider-like face appeared. His mechanical eyes were wide with something that looked very much like fear. Behind him, his bridge was filled with smoke and the sounds of alarms. Human Commander Drell said, his voice stripped of all its earlier arrogance. We request a ceasefire. We surrender. Please, no more. Jang studied him for a long moment. This creature had come to her space to steal human worlds. He had looked at 12 million human lives and seen nothing but property to be claimed. Now he was begging for mercy. Your surrender is accepted, she said finally. All move-in vessels will power down their weapons and engines immediately. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Any ship that attempts to fight will be destroyed. You came here expecting prey, Commander Drell. You found something very different. She cut the communication and turned to her crew. Their faces were exhausted but triumphant. They had done something that no one in the galaxy had thought possible. They had taken a force 4 times their size and broken it in a matter of hours. Signal Admiral Wan Jang ordered. Tell him the battle is over. We won. On the UEC Sovereign, Admiral Wan received the news with quiet satisfaction. Around him, his bridge crew erupted in cheers and embraces. Someone was crying. Someone else was laughing. The tension of the past hours was releasing itself in a flood of emotion. Admiral Commander Shin said, her voice thick with tears, We did it. We actually did it. Juan nodded slowly. His old heart was full of pride for the men and women who had followed him into battle, but also heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. Record a message, he said. Broadcast it to the entire galaxy. He stood and faced the communication array. His uniform was rumpled and his hair was disheveled, but his eyes burned with a fire that no amount of exhaustion could dim. This is Admiral Yong Wan of the United Earth Confederacy, Third Fleet. Today, humanity defended itself against an unjust occupation. The Movin Vanguard has been defeated. Their fleet lies in ruins. Their commander has surrendered. He paused, letting his words carry across the stars. Let this be a lesson to the Galactic Council and to all who voted against us. Humanity will not be conquered. Humanity will not be enslaved. Humanity will not kneel. We came to the stars in peace, and we were answered with betrayal. Now we answer with fire. He took a breath. The colonies are safe. The people are safe. And anyone who threatens them again will learn what the Movins learned today. There is no force in this galaxy that can stand against human determination. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you push humanity too far? The message ended. The recording light went dark. Commander Shin looked at her admiral with something like wonder. Sir, what happens now? Juan looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a galaxy was learning to fear humanity. Somewhere out there, ancient empires were reconsidering their assumptions about the young species from Earth. Now, he said softly, we teach them the rest of the lesson. The news spread faster than light itself. Every species in the Galactic Council watched the footage from the Battle of the Outer Reach with disbelief. The Movin Empire that had bullied and conquered for 8,000 years had been destroyed by a fleet, 1/4 their size. Their commander had surrendered on his knees. Begging for mercy from creatures the galaxy had dismissed as primitive newcomers. Everything changed in a single day. On Earth, billions of people gathered in streets and squares to watch President Hansu address the United Confederacy. She stood at a podium in the Great Hall of the United Nations, a building that had survived wars and disasters and the long journey to the stars. Behind her hung the flag of Earth, a simple blue sphere against a field of black, surrounded by stars. My fellow humans, she began, her voice steady and clear, today marks a turning point in our history. For 150 years, we have walked among the stars as guests. We joined the Galactic Council, believing that we would be treated fairly. We believed that justice and law would protect our people. She paused, her dark eyes scanning the countless faces watching her words. The Council betrayed us. They voted to hand over 3 of our colonies, 3 worlds filled with 12 million human souls. To an empire that saw our people as nothing more than property, they looked at humanity and saw weakness. They looked at our children and saw slaves. Her voice hardened. They made a mistake. Today, the galaxy learned what that mistake cost. Our fleet met the Movin invasion force and destroyed it. 62 enemy ships lie in ruins. Nearly 150 more have surrendered. Our losses were minimal. The colonies are safe. A roar of cheering erupted from the crowds gathered around the world. President Hansu waited for the noise to fade before continuing. Let me be clear about what comes next. Humanity does not seek war. We do not desire conquest or empire. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, not enemies. But we will not be victims. We will not allow our people to be traded like goods in a market. We will not kneel before any power in this galaxy, no matter how ancient or mighty. She leaned forward, her words burning with intensity. To the species who voted against us in the Council, we know who you are. We remember every name, every vote, every betrayal. You will answer for what you did. Not with war, not unless you force our hand. But with the knowledge that humanity has a long memory, we do not forget. We do not forgive easily, and we no longer trust. She straightened. To those who stood with us, who voted for justice when it would have been easier to follow the crowd, you have our gratitude. You have proven that honor still exists in this galaxy. We will remember your courage as surely as we remember the treachery of others. President Hansu took a breath, and let it out slowly. The old order is ending. A new era is beginning. Humanity will no longer hide its strength or pretend to be weak. We will take our place among the stars as equals, not as guests to be tolerated, but as a power to be respected. This is not a threat. It is simply the truth. She raised her hand in farewell. May God bless Earth and all her children, wherever they may be. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species who had never given humanity a second thought suddenly found themselves very interested in this young race from the third planet of an unremarkable star. In the weeks that followed, human forces moved quickly. The three disputed colonies were secured behind walls of warships. The move-in hierarchy, reeling from their defeat, requested a ceasefire. But Ambassador Kong Tae, now elevated to the position of Supreme Diplomatic Envoy, refused to negotiate. "You came to take what was ours," he told the Mavan delegation through a secure communication channel. "You failed. Now, before we discuss peace, we want answers." Right. "What kind of answers?" the move-in ambassador asked nervously. Tae's eyes were cold as space. "We want to know who else voted for our subjugation. We want names. We want to know every species that looked at humanity and saw prey." The list was long, and humanity had excellent memory. One by one, the species who had voted against Earth began receiving visitors. Human diplomatic vessels appeared in orbit above their capital worlds, not warships, but sleek, elegant craft bearing the flag of the United Confederacy. Yet these diplomatic ships never arrived alone. Behind them, always visible on the edge of sensor range, came fleets of human warships. Dozens of them. Sometimes hundreds. The message needed no words. "We know what you did. We know where you live. We have not forgotten." Some species apologized immediately. They offered trade concessions and military cooperation and promises of eternal friendship. Others tried to explain that they had been pressured by the move-ins, that they had not really wanted to vote against humanity, that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Ambassador Tae listened to their excuses with a face like stone. He did not argue. He did not threaten. He simply recorded their words and moved on to the next world. The fear his silence created was worse than any threat could have been. Elder Thovak of the Valari Collective was one of the few who had voted in humanity's favor. He was ancient beyond measure, his body more plant than animal. With roots that spread through an entire mountain and a consciousness that touched thousands of smaller bodies scattered across his world, when Ambassador Tae requested a private meeting, Thovak agreed immediately. They met in a garden on the Valari homeworld. Flowers that had been blooming for 10,000 years surrounded them with colors that human eyes had never evolved to see. Tae sat on a bench carved from living wood, while one of Thovak's smaller bodies settled across from him. "You tried to warn them," Tae said. "In the chamber, before the vote, I saw you speaking to the other delegations. You were trying to convince them not to support the move-ins." Thovak's body shifted slowly, leaves rustling like a whispered conversation. "I was, but they did not listen. They never listened to the old voices anymore. Why did you try?" "Because I have lived long enough to read history." Thovak's ancient eyes studied the human ambassador. "Your species is different from the others. Most races, when they first reach the stars, are cautious, careful. They spend centuries building strength before they dare to challenge the established order. And humans? Humans run toward danger, not away from it. You are barely 2 centuries old as a spacefaring civilization, yet you have already done what no species has done in 12,000 years. You have made the Galactic Council afraid." Thovak paused. "That is not an insult, Ambassador. It is a warning. For everyone else." Tae was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "We did not want this. We wanted peace. We wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves. I know, but the galaxy did not give you that choice. They forced you to become something harder, something sharper." Thovak's leaves rustled again. "The question now is what kind of power you will be. Will you use your strength to punish? To conquer? Or will you use it to build something better?" Tae looked up at the alien sky. Stars were beginning to appear, as the sun set. Distant lights that represented countless worlds and countless species who were all, at this moment, wondering what humanity would do next. "I do not know," he admitted. "I truly do not know. But I hope that we will be better than what was done to us. I hope that we will remember what it felt like to be weak and afraid, and that memory will make us kind." Thovac made a sound that might have been a sigh. That is the hope of every old civilization looking at every young one. Sometimes it comes true. Sometimes it does not. And what do you think? About us? The ancient being was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "I think you are the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen. But I also think you might be the most beautiful. Only time will tell which nature wins." He paused. "I hope I live long enough to see it." Tay rose from his bench and bowed respectfully to the ancient creature. "Thank you, Elder, for your vote. For your warning. For your hope." "Thank me when you have proven me right," Thovac replied. "Until then, go carefully, Ambassador. The whole galaxy is watching." Tay walked out of the garden into the fading light. Behind him, the ancient plants continued their eternal growth, reaching toward a sky full of stars and the uncertain future that awaited them all. 6 months had passed since the day humanity walked out of the Galactic Assembly. 6 months of fear and uncertainty. 6 months of diplomatic visits and careful negotiations. 6 months of watching human fleets patrol territories that had once been considered safe from challenge. Now, the council was gathering again. But everything had changed. The great chamber looked the same, the living crystal walls, impossible ceiling, the thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles. But the atmosphere was different. The arrogance that had filled these halls for 12,000 years was gone. In its place was something new, something that many of these ancient species had never experienced before: respect. And beneath that respect, fear. At the center of the chamber floor, a new podium had been installed. It was larger than the others, made of metal that gleamed like polished silver. Above it hung the flag of the United Earth's Confederacy, the blue sphere of Earth surrounded by stars. 150 years ago, humanity had been given a small corner of this chamber and told to stay quiet while the adults made decisions. Today, they stood at the very heart of galactic power. Ambassador Kong Tay walked to the podium with slow, measured steps. He was not a young man anymore. The past 6 months had added new lines to his face and new gray to his hair. But his eyes were bright with purpose, and his voice was strong as it carried across the silent assembly. "High Speaker Vorath," he began, "distinguished representatives, honored guests, humanity has returned to the Galactic Council." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Tay waited for it to fade before continuing. 6 months ago, we left this chamber in anger. We had been betrayed by those we trusted. Our colonies had been traded away like unwanted cargo. Our people had been dismissed as insignificant. We were told that we were too young, too weak, too unimportant to deserve justice. He paused, letting the memory of that day settle over the assembly. We proved them wrong. The move-in hierarchy sent 300 warships to claim what was ours. We destroyed their fleet with fewer than 90 ships. We liberated our colonies. We protected our people. And we showed the galaxy that humanity is not prey. Lieutenant Unipark stood beside her ambassador, her hands clasped behind her back. She looked out at the assembled representatives and saw what 6 months of human pressure had accomplished. Species who had once laughed at humanity now sat in nervous silence. Empires that had bullied their neighbors for millennia now studied their datapads and avoided eye contact. The old order was crumbling, and everyone in this chamber knew it. But we did not return here to gloat, Tay continued. We did not come to demand apologies or tribute. We came to offer you a choice. He activated a holographic display that floated above the chamber floor. It showed the current map of the galaxy, a map that had changed significantly in the past 6 months. Human territory had expanded. Former move-in holdings now flew Earth's banner. Trade routes that had once bypassed human space now flowed directly through it. And at the heart of human territory, a massive structure was under construction, a station larger than any ever built. Bristling with weapons and surrounded by fleet after fleet of warships, this is the Terran Citadel, Tay explained. When complete, it will be the largest military installation in the galaxy. It will serve as the headquarters of our defense forces and the seat of human galactic power. It is being built not because we want war, but because we will never again be vulnerable to those who wish us harm. He turned off the display. The choice we offer is simple: partnership or isolation, cooperation or competition. We have no desire for empire. We have no interest in conquering your worlds or subjugating your people. We remember what it felt like to be seen as weak, and we will not do to others what was done to us. His voice softened slightly. But we will also never again allow ourselves to be sacrificed for political convenience. We will never again trust blindly in the goodwill of others. We will protect our people with every weapon at our disposal, and we will answer every threat with overwhelming force. He looked directly at High Speaker Vorath. Council made a mistake 6 months ago. We are offering you a chance to make it right. Choose partnership, and humanity will be the most loyal ally you have ever had. Choose competition, and you will face the most dangerous enemy this galaxy has ever seen. The decision is yours.
Stop.
For a long moment, no one moved. Then High Speaker Vorath rose from his seat. His movements were slow and careful, his ancient body showing signs of stress that had not been there 6 months ago. "Ambassador Kang," he said, his voice subdued and weary, "the Kellan Federation extends its formal apology to the people of Earth. We were wrong. We allowed ourselves to be manipulated by those who saw humanity as an obstacle to be removed rather than a partner to be welcomed. We failed in our duty as leaders of this council, and we accept responsibility for that failure." He paused, visibly struggling with the words. "We choose partnership. We choose to stand with humanity rather than against it. And we sincerely hope that this marks the beginning of a new era of cooperation between our peoples." One by one, species rose to offer their apologies, their concessions, their offers of alliance. Some were sincere, others were clearly motivated by fear, but all of them understood the same truth: the galaxy had changed, and humanity was at the center of that change. Admiral Yong-Wan watched the proceedings from the bridge of the UEC Sovereign, which held position in high orbit above the Council world. Commander Narration stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the broadcast. "They are afraid of us now," she said quietly. "Really? Truly afraid?" Han nodded slowly. "Good. Fear keeps the peace. Respect earns it. Today, we have achieved both. Do you think it will last? The peace, I mean?" Huan considered the question carefully. He had fought too many battles to believe in permanent peace. He had seen too much of the galaxy's nature to trust in the goodwill of strangers. "For a while," he said finally, "perhaps for a generation, perhaps for a century, but eventually someone will forget. Someone will look at humanity and see the young species we used to be instead of the power we have become. When that happens, we will remind them." He turned away from the view screen. "Till then, we build. We grow stronger. We prepare for the day when our strength will be tested again." He smiled slightly. "That is what humans do. We survive. We adapt. We overcome. And we never, ever give up." On Earth, President Hansu watched the council proceedings from her office window. The city lights of Neo Sol glittered below like a reflection of the stars above. Her aide, Secretary Haeung-kyu, stood nearby with a datapad full of reports and requests. "The vote has passed," he said. "The Council has officially welcomed humanity back as a full member with expanded rights and privileges. Ambassador Kong is calling it the greatest diplomatic victory in our history." Han Su nodded but did not turn from the window. Her mind was on other things, and the future that stretched before humanity like an uncharted sea. "Do you think they have truly learned their lesson?" Hyun-kyu asked. "The Council, I mean, do you think they understand what we are?" The president was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful and distant. "Some of them understand, the wise ones. The ones who have lived long enough to see empires rise and fall. They know that humanity is different. They know that we are not like the other species who have come before us, and the others." Han Su finally turned from the window. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a fire that had not been there 6 months ago, fire that had been lit by betrayal and forged by triumph. "The others will learn. In time, they will test us again, because that is what empires do. They will probe for weakness and look for opportunities to put us back in our place." She shook her head slowly. "But they will fail. Every time. Because humanity has something that most species in this galaxy have forgotten." "What is that, Madam President?" Han Su smiled, a small, fierce smile that seemed to contain entire volumes of human history. "We remember. We remember every betrayal, every insult, every moment when someone looked at us and saw prey instead of people. And that memory drives us forward. It makes us stronger. It makes us ready for whatever comes next." She walked to her desk and sat down, her mind already turning to the 1,000 tasks that awaited her attention. "The galaxy will remember this day," she said. "They will remember what happened when they pushed humanity too far. And if they ever forget," she looked up at the stars visible through her window, her eyes hard and bright, "we will remind them." Far above Earth, the UEC Sovereign continued its eternal patrol. In the outer reach, 12 million human souls went about their lives, safe behind walls of steel and courage. And across the galaxy, 1,000 species looked toward the stars and wondered what humanity would do next. The old order had ended. A new era had begun, and humanity stood at its center, ready for whatever the future might bring.